Bernie Sanders gave a speech at the Brookings Institute. He's, of course, considering a presidential run in 2016. Let's listen to him tear the place down.
Over 99% of all the new income generated goes to the top 1%. An example. The top 25 hedge fund managers made more than $24 billion in 2013. That is equivalent to the full salaries of more than 425,000 public school teachers. Anyone really think that is morally acceptable, economically acceptable? Is that really what our country should be about? But income inequality is not just the moral issue of whether we are satisfied about living in a country where we have seen a proliferation of billionaires at the same time as millions of families are struggling to make sure they're able to feed their kids. It is also a profound political issue. As a result of the disastrous Supreme Court decision, the 5-4 decision on Citizens United, billionaire families are now able to spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase the candidates of their choice. The billionaire class now owns the economy, and they are working day and night to make certain that they own the United States government. According to media reports, it appears that one family, the extreme right-wing Koch brothers, are prepared to spend more money than either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in the coming elections. In other words, one family, a family which is worth about $100 billion, may well have a stronger political presence than either of our major parties. Now, I know that people are not comfortable when I say this, but I want you to take a hard look at what's going on. Take a deep breath. And you tell me whether or not we are looking at a democracy or whether or not we are looking at an oligarchy.
Bernie Sanders is a legend. He's one of the few who's really speaking truth to power and representing the American people. And the point that I want to make here to add on top of that is, this isn't theoretical. I know he's posing it as a question, and that's how he's doing it within the context of his speech, but it's not theoretical. We know what the answer to that is, and it's true that in the United States of America today, we function much more like an oligarchy or a kleptocracy or a plutocracy. All political science terms that basically mean more or less government of, by, and for the rich. There is a ruling class in America, and they really control the policy direction that the country goes in. Now, when I say this isn't theoretical, I mean there's hardcore data and research done on this. There was, Princeton researchers, Harvard researchers who looked into this, political scientists who found out that when you really dive into the details and you go issue by issue and you compare what the American people want versus the policies that we end up getting, there is no correlation between what your average American wants and the policies that we get. Now, understand that that's the whole idea of a representative democracy. That as long as we're not dealing with a constitutional issue which is off the table and not open to democratic debate, right? As long as we're not dealing with that, then everything else should be open to discussion and debate and the democratic will of the majority of the American people. But now it's not even like, hey, 50% of the time we get what we want, which would still be horrible in a so-called representative democracy. It's not like 23% of the time we get what we want. We don't ever get what we want. And if we happen to get a policy initiative that we like, it's by accident. It's because you have more money lining up on our side, more special interest money lining up on our side. A good example of that is net neutrality. The American people ended up winning, but not because they listened to us and all the comments that we submitted on this issue. No, it's just that Google and Facebook and Amazon and other big money institutions decided to lobby the government to counter the Verizons and the Comcasts of the world who wanted to regulate the internet. So we're screwed, man. I mean, I want to try to sugarcoat it and put a smiley face on this before we finish the conversation here, but there is no smiley face to put on it. I mean, you guys have heard me time and time again go through the specifics to the point where I'm sure all of you can recite the specifics, how over 90% of the American people want a universal background check for gun purchases. We didn't even get that. Over 90% want it. Couldn't even get that. Why? Because the NRA paid the Republicans to block it. And of course, the NRA get their money from the gun manufacturers. So the one group of people that should not be able to control policy on guns in America because they have a financial conflict of interest to go out a certain way, they're the ones who are controlling gun policy in America. The people who make their money by selling guns are controlling the direction of gun policy in America because our government is just totally bought and owned at this moment. You could also go to the, minimum wage debate. 80% of us want to raise that. We haven't gotten that yet. Why? Because the multinational corporations all agree that they don't want to raise the minimum wage because it would cut into their profits. So 80% of the American people, including a majority of independents and Republicans, we get the middle finger put in our face and they say, sorry, we're not going to do what you want us to do. So how is it that in a representative democracy, the people that we pick, we end up giving them a 9% or 12% approval rating year in, year out, year in, year out? How can that be? We're picking them. So what, are we all just really fickle, silly human beings who we pick somebody and then the next day we go, I hate the motherfucker? No. It's that they're not doing what we want them to do because they are bought by the corporations and there's a 90% reelection rate. The 90% reelection rate is because the big money floods into the elections and dupes you over. That's what it boils down to. You're duped about your candidate, and they lie to you about the candidates who would probably do a decent job in office. And the people that raise the most money get the most ad time, they get better name recognition, they get the most votes. So we all end up voting for the people who we give a 9% or 12% or 13% approval rating to. That's the key fact to remember in this discussion. There's over a 90% re-election rate, and there's only a 9% or so approval rating. That's because they've been lying to us all along, and big money has flooded the system and lied to you and misled you and given you choices that are all bought and owned by the corporation so that no matter who you end up voting for, you're always going to get the same result when they start to govern.